They called me a gold digger at the very dinner meant to welcome me into their family. The dinner was held at the Langford estate, a mansion worth more than an entire city block. A 10-meter table draped in pristine white linen, golden candlelight glinting off diamond rings. I, Maya James, the only black woman in the room, was married to Elijah Langford, sole heir to their real estate empire. Victoria, my mother-in-law, rose from her seat. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the air. "You are a liability, and I have proof you're exploiting the Langford name for personal gain." She placed an envelope on the table. Elijah said nothing. I gave a soft smile and set my napkin down. "Thank you. Now I understand why this family needs me more than I'll ever need you." I stood up and walked away. But what I didn't expect was that the person who stood up right behind me was Elijah. What do you think happened after I left that table? Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. This was only the beginning. I left the table with my head high, but my heart couldn't lift, because every time I'm made to feel small, I remember where I come from, South Atlanta, where leaky rooftops were patched with plastic bags. My mother was a seamstress. Her hands were rough but never trembling. She raised me alone after my father died. No health insurance, no help. They said, "There's nothing we can do." I learned early, sometimes people don't save you, because you're poor. Our house had 2 rooms, no AC, no hot water, but my mother taught me to stand tall. You don't have to beg for a seat at their table, just remember, you belong there. That's why I didn't break tonight. I've survived colder rooms than this, and walked out standing. I started out as a hotel maid at 18, cleaning toilets by day, studying online by night, on a cracked phone with a dying battery. No one thought I'd last a semester. I had no family name, no Langfords behind me, just my mother and a dream, to one day own a hotel of my own. 3 years later, I graduated with honors, barely enough credit to get a small business loan from a local bank. I emptied my savings and signed a lease for a rundown house on the edge of town, painted the walls myself, picked the sheets, dusted every room by hand, then opened the door to my first guest. 9 rooms, 2 employees, 1 belief. 6 years later, I owned 3 hotels across 3 states, and the name Maya James started showing up on entrepreneurs to watch lists. But to them, I was still the girl who used to clean rooms. I met Elijah Langford at an investment summit in Boston. I didn't know who he was, just a quiet white man sitting in the back row. After my pitch, the room clapped. He just asked, "How did you maintain a steady profit margin 3 years in a row without major capital?" That question made me notice him. We started meeting for business. He reviewed my expansion plan. I gave feedback on his land development deal. Elijah had it all: wealth, degrees, connections. But what made me trust him was the way he listened. No interruptions, no pretending. He never asked if I had an MBA. He asked, "Where'd you learn all this?" I answered, "In the rooms I used to clean." He smiled, and from that moment, something began. Victoria didn't speak much, but her eyes always said enough. The first time I visited the Langford estate, she shook my hand lightly. No eye contact, no questions. Just a glance at my shoes and a comment, "Bold choice." From then on, I was quietly excluded. Family lunch? No invite. Charity gala? I was told, "Keep it simple, don't stand out." Once I overheard her say to a friend, "She has a streetwise aura," and the words rolled across the marble floor and hit me square. I smiled, said nothing, because I knew what unsettled them wasn't how I dressed. It was how I walked into a room, like I belonged, even when, in their eyes, I never should have been there. I spent 3 months preparing a grant proposal for the Langford Foundation. My goal: open a women-led, sustainable hotel branch in Kenya. The numbers were solid. The model was sound. My partners reputable. Everything was neatly packaged, with letters of support from 2 major funds. Elijah placed a hand on my shoulder. "You'll get it. This project is more noble than half the things she's ever funded." I smiled, not because I was certain, because I believed him. Believed that with the Langford name beside mine, I wouldn't be doubted. I submitted the application on Monday. For the first time in my life, I felt like the door ahead of me wasn't locked. Week 1 passed. No reply. I sent a follow-up email. The foundation's secretary replied with one line, "Your application is under review." Week 2, a friend in the industry messaged, Congrats, just heard the foundation fast-tracked a textile grant in Texas. Super quick disbursement. I froze. That project applied a week after mine. Its founder had just met Victoria at a charity gala. I recognized the feeling. Being told you're under review, while others are already moving forward. The quiet way, doors shut without ever saying no. I asked Elijah. He frowned. Probably just a slow process. I wanted to believe him, but something inside me cracked, and I didn't know when it would break wide open. That afternoon, I met Lena, an investment fund CEO in Chicago. We'd worked together before. This time, I brought plans for Ghana. She looked at me for a long moment. Maya, you're doing great, but there's something you should know. The Langford Foundation circulated a memo internally, flagging projects to review with caution. I sat up. And my name is on it? She nodded. Not an outright rejection, but they called you a brand sensitivity risk. I left the cafe with my proposal untouched in my bag. The wind cut sharp, but not sharper than those words. I've been judged before, but this time, something was different, and I knew if I didn't find out why, it would destroy everything I'd built. That night, I called Lena again. She sent me a screenshot, no explanation needed. Email, subject, Maya James proposal for internal note only. Sender, Victoria Langford. Recipients, 12 major investment firms. I read every line. Controversial project, potential image risks. Indications of leveraging marital ties for advantage. Recommend further review of leadership competency. None of it was true, but it was enough to slam every door shut. I sat still in my apartment. Streetlights dimmed beyond the window. My heart didn't ache the way I expected. It just felt cold. Because the woman who'd sat across from me for 3 years was the first to want me gone from a world she controlled. I placed the printed email on the kitchen counter. Elijah walked in from his meeting, shirt still wrinkled. He looked at the paper, then at me. Where did you get this? I didn't answer. I just looked at him. Not angry, not crying, just waiting. Would he defend me? Or defend her? Elijah stopped reading after line 3. I saw his hands tighten, but all he said was, "There has to be some mistake. My mother wouldn't do this." I smiled, tired. That's a familiar line. Women like me hear it all our lives. He said nothing, and that silence was louder than any accusation. I asked honestly, if it were you, who would you believe? The woman who shares your home, or the one who gave you your name? What about you? If the person you love betrays you to keep peace in their family, could you forgive them? Comment your thoughts below. I want to hear from you. I drove to my mother's house in silence. No music, no GPS, just the wind slapping my face as if trying to sweep away the tightness in my throat. The old house hadn't changed. Dry leaves still scattered across the front yard. Mom opened the door without a word. She looked at me and not opened her arms. I collapsed into her like a child again, 8 years old, lost and tired, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not because of Victoria, not even because of Elijah, but because I had tried so hard to be accepted by people who never wanted me to belong. I thought if I worked hard, stayed decent, stayed kind, they'd see me differently. But some doors are locked from the inside, and no one's looking for the key. My mother didn't say much. She just stroked my back. Crying, she said, is sometimes how you learn to stand up again. I ran into Miss Yvette at the corner grocery near my mom's place. She'd once worked for the Langford family, decades of quiet service. Back then, she rarely spoke, never interfered, never lingered too long. But today, she took off her glasses and walked up to me. Her eyes were steady, her voice deep and firm. I heard everything she said about you, Maya. I froze. I heard it when she thought I wasn't there. Heard her say you were a threat to their image. Heard her call you background noise, not front cover material. I swallowed hard. Yvette placed her hand on my shoulder. I couldn't speak when I still worked for them, but I don't work for them anymore. And then she looked at me like someone who'd finally seen enough, not because she was given permission, but because she'd reached her limit. Before she left, Miss Yvette pulled a small USB drive from her coat pocket. She held it tightly, as if it weighed more than it should. They trusted me completely. Never imagined someone like me knew how to use a recording device. But I recorded every time she talked about you. I pressed record. I stared at the tiny flash drive, barely the size of a candy, but I knew. Inside it was something I hadn't had in 3 years. Evidence. "You don't have to trust me," she said. "Just listen." I took it. My hands trembled, not out of fear, but hope. Hope that this time my voice wouldn't be buried beneath louder, more powerful lies. A quiet housemaid had just handed me the key to the truth, and, maybe, to justice. I plugged the USB into my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, cold with nerves. The first sound was the clink of silverware on porcelain. Then Victoria's voice, clear, crisp, unmistakable. "She should be grateful we let her into this family. We've been generous, but people like that, they never know when to stop." A soft laugh from someone else. Then Victoria again. "I don't hate her. I just don't want the Langford name paraded around in her little hotel projects. We're a brand, not a charity." I didn't move. The headphones clamped to my ears like a vice. Every word she spoke cut sharp, undeniable, unedited, real. The room felt colder than a basement vault. Just my breath, and the thud of my heartbeat echoing louder than anything she said. I asked Elijah to meet me, alone, at the apartment I'd rented near my mother's. No small talk, no preamble. I opened the laptop and hit play. He sat still, eyes fixed on the screen. Victoria's voice sliced through the speakers. "Women like her don't need hate. Just boundaries. They'll learn their limits soon enough." I stopped the recording before it finished. No need to hear more. No room for explanation. Elijah looked up, eyes tinged with red. He exhaled. "What do you want from me?" I looked at him calmly. "I want you to choose." No tears, no pleading, just one silent question. Who do you choose? The woman who built a life with you, or the family that keeps you trapped in a name? We all know some answers aren't spoken. They arrive in silence. Within 2 weeks, I lost 3 major deals. A Dubai partner pulled out last minute, citing a strategic shift. A Toronto fund went dark, despite verbally confirming support, and a longtime Atlanta partner signed with my competitor. No one gave reasons, but I knew. They'd all gotten the same silent memo: keep your distance. My reputation wasn't ruined overnight, but eroded by whispers. Not scandal, just strategic silence, the kind that wounds you without leaving a fingerprint. My Kenya expansion had to pause. I emailed the recruiting team to apologize for delays. I've never broken a promise, but this time, I had to choose between keeping my word or keeping the company alive. I remembered a meeting months before the wedding. A quiet afternoon in a private boardroom. Victoria slid a thick folder across the wooden table. Her voice was soft, almost polite. "This is necessary, for everyone's protection." I opened the prenuptial agreement. Every page a projection, that I'd take the money and run. Elijah said nothing, just looked at me. His gaze didn't defend me, but it didn't betray me either. I closed the folder and pushed it back. "I don't need your family's money. I've built my own." She smiled. "Then sign it. If you don't need it, you shouldn't be afraid." I stood. "I won't sign. Not because I'm afraid, but because I don't owe you proof of my worth." Back then, I didn't know. Refusing to sign was my first act of war against a world built to question women like me. 2 days later, Elijah came back. No apology, no questions, just a weathered envelope in his hand, yellowed by time, in shaky cursive, "To the one who loves without bowing." "My grandmother wrote this," he said quietly. "Mom never let anyone read it. I found it cleaning the attic." I opened it. Faded ink, slanted letters. In 1961, I loved a black man. He showed me the world through new eyes. But I let him go, because I was afraid to lose the Langford name. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink to fit their legacy. I folded the letter slowly, and, for the first time, I realized someone in that family had once felt what I feel. They just didn't fight for it. But I will. I kept reading, each line from a woman who carried the Langford name, but once strayed from its rules. They made choices for me, chose legacy over love, tradition over truth. If I had another chance, I wouldn't ask permission to love, I would choose. That's all love really is. Love doesn't need to be accepted. It needs to be chosen, daily, through action, not words. I closed the letter. No tears, just a thick knot in my throat. It felt like a late confession, from the past, and maybe a kind of permission for my present. Now I understand. I'm not the first to be rejected because of my skin, but maybe I'll be the first not to stay silent about it. She didn't choose, but I will. And I'll make him choose with me. I sat alone in my home office. No lights on, just the glow of the city outside filtering through sheer curtains. On the desk lay everything I'd sent out. The rejection letters, the USB, the letter from the woman who once chose silence. I closed my eyes, saw my mother cutting fabric under yellow light, felt my own hands years ago scrubbing stair rails, heard Victoria's voice every time I entered a room like I was taking up space that belonged to someone else. I exhaled and whispered, "They want me smaller, softer, quieter." But I was born to take up space, whether they're ready to see it or not. Not everyone is ready for a black woman who stands tall, but sometimes. All it takes is one woman who refuses to shrink, to show the others they don't have to either. What about you? How many times have you made yourself small to fit someone else's version of you? Write it in the comments. You might not be the only one. The Langford Foundation Gala was held at the Carlton Hotel this year, the same hotel that once refused to sign a deal with me citing brand image concerns. 300 guests, crystal chandeliers, the soft clink of champagne glasses, and I walked in without an RSVP. No one had warned them. Just me, in a red high-neck backless gown, stitched in the same tiny workshop where my mother once sewed for others. Red like fire, silent like a blade. The doors opened. The music kept playing, but every gaze in the room flickered off like dying bulbs. 1 second, then 2. The entire ballroom seemed to freeze mid-waltz. Victoria turned first. Her glass hovered, suspended mid-air. I didn't smile, didn't bow. I just walked, step by step, as if that marble floor had been laid for me to walk across. And, for the first time, no one dared to say I didn't belong. Victoria stood on stage, holding the microphone like a scepter. She began her speech with that familiar voice, slow, poised, the confidence of someone used to reverence. This year, the Langford Foundation funded over 12 innovation projects. We remain proud to serve the community. Polite applause echoed on cue. I stood at the back of the room, surrounded by designer gowns and tuxedos as silent as statues. Just as she was about to step down, Elijah's voice rang out, "Mom, wait, I have something to say." Heads turned. Victoria paused. Elijah took the mic from the coordinator and stepped onto the stage. A hush swept through the entire room. He didn't look at anyone, except me. Then he turned to the crowd. "I ask for just a few minutes, because there's a truth that's been hidden far too long." Elijah stood center stage. Behind him, a screen lit up with slanted handwriting. His grandmother's letter, the one Victoria had kept hidden all her life. Holding a printed copy, he read slowly, each word pulled straight from his chest. "If I had a second chance, I wouldn't ask permission to love, I would choose. That's all love really is. Love doesn't need to be accepted, it needs to be chosen." A few murmurs flickered through the crowd, but vanished just as fast. Nearly 300 people fell into a silence heavy as stone. Elijah looked up. His voice stayed calm, but his eyes were red. The woman I chose was rejected, not just by my mother, but by a system that believes worth is tied to skin color and pedigree. No one moved. No cameras clicked. Only silence, sharp and echoing. Because everyone in that room knew. This wasn't just her story. It was theirs too. Elijah set the letter down. From his pocket he pulled out a small USB and plugged it into the projector. Emails appeared across the screen. Subject line, "Re-brand risk." Then audio played. Victoria's voice, clear, unedited, unmistakable. "We can't let Elijah's wife use the Langford name to push her local ventures. The foundation must stay selective. This isn't about charity." A sharp inhale swept the room. Some guests covered their mouths. Several older donors lowered their heads. Elijah looked directly at his mother, still standing below the stage. Maya wasn't excluded because she lacked ability. Not because she wasn't good enough, but because you weren't fair enough. And he stopped there. No defense, no excuses, because sometimes the truth, spoken plainly, is the only indictment you need. The room stayed still. No one clapped. No one stood. Elijah stepped away from the podium, his hand trembling slightly, but his voice steady. He turned to me, not in apology, not in shame, but with the look of someone who finally knows what and who he's meant to protect. I used to think I needed my mother's approval to love Maya. I thought family was forever, and love needed validation. I was wrong. He gestured to the screen behind him, where the evidence still glowed, then looked back with unshaken resolve. Today, in front of you all, I choose Maya. Not because she deserves us, but because we no longer deserve her. A few gasps. A single glass clinked softly, and I knew. Some words don't just change a gala. They change how a woman is seen, in a room that once tried to erase her. No one spoke at first, just silence echoing off marble walls. Then, one woman stood, the president of a major foundation, someone who'd once rejected me. She clapped, slow, firm, then another, and another. Applause spread across the room like a wave, not out of politeness but instinct. I walked toward the stage. Elijah reached for my hand. I took it, firmly, without hesitation. Together, we stepped down. No speeches, no bows, because some moments need no words. The red gown fanned like flame across the steps. I looked up one last time. Victoria still sat frozen, her hands clutching her purse, knuckles pale, and I walked past her, as if no one had ever stood there trying to block my way. 6 months later, I stood in front of a pale ivory building in the heart of Accra, Ghana. Sunlight shimmered off the golden stone, glowing against a brand-new plaque. James Rising Hotel. My father's name. The man who died because we couldn't afford treatment. The man the world never noticed. Today, his name crowned a 12-story building, a place that would provide jobs for hundreds. Beneath the name, a slogan carved in 3 languages. We don't wait to be invited. We build our own doors. The ribbon was cut by my mother. Her hand trembled slightly, but her eyes burned brighter than I'd ever seen. Struggles, tears, betrayal, all settled into that one moment. Not the end of a journey, the beginning of a new generation, unafraid to stand tall and write itself into the world. I stepped into the HR office of our new hotel. Yellow walls, dark wood desk, leather chairs worn with purpose. Behind the desk sat Miss Yvette, in a gray dress, glasses hanging from a silver chain. Her eyes were sharp, just like the first time I saw her again on my mother's porch. "You gave me space," she said, skipping formalities. "So I'll give you people no one else will trust. The brilliant ones rejected for how they speak, how they dress, where they come from." I nodded, because I had been them, and I knew. Fairness isn't in resumes. It's in the eyes reading them. Miss Yvette didn't need an MBA. She needed what she'd never been allowed to give before, a chance to give others a chance, and I believe every hotel that bears the James name will begin there. Late afternoon, the hotel's back garden bathed in sunlight. I sat on a wooden bench, warm tea in hand. In front of me, my daughter, Ava, was playing tag with 3 other children, a curly-haired brown boy, a pale girl with golden hair, a skinny kid with honey-dark skin. They laughed endlessly. No last names, no resumes, no legacies, just laughter and freedom. I looked up at the white wall of the hotel. Beneath the bronze logo, I'd once etched a line, "Here, no one has to prove they belong." I thought of my mother, my father, of all the times I had to justify my right to exist. But Ava, she won't have to. She'll grow up in a world her mother once fought to build, a world where every child is seen through eyes of equity. I once asked to be let into their world, knocked on doors, smiled carefully, tried not to take up too much space, just to be accepted. But now I know. Some of us weren't born to be invited in. We were born to build our own tables. If they don't have a seat for you, build your own table, and then invite those who were left out, just like you. I don't share this story for pity. I share it so that someone wondering if they're enough will know they are, not because they're perfect, but because they're themselves. If you've ever been rejected for simply being who you are, share your story. Someone out there needs to hear your voice, and if you believe we all deserve a seat, subscribe to this channel, because the next table I build, I won't build it alone.